This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you're looking for cards in the US, look no further as you can use the promo code MTGMudsta to get you 5% off anything on the site. Or if you're in Canada like me, you can use the same promo code at Multizone to get 10% off your orders of singles. If cards aren't what you're looking for, Original Magic Art has playmats, tokens, and sweet art that you can use that same promo code to help you get 5% off your order there. And if you just want to help out the channel, you can always consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month and join the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game finds us back at Multizone, and I've borrowed Miguel's Trelasarra deck, Keeping of Plains, Healer of the Pride, Tuskard Captain, Selesnya Guildgate, Prosperous Innkeeper, Kazandu Nectarpot, and Promise of Loyalty. Jesse is back with Zurzoth, keeping 3 mountains, Furnace of Wrath, Tybalt, Rakish Instigator, Spiteful Prankster, and a Charmbreaker Devils. Kevin is playing that Zara deck, keeping Glasses of Urza, Ponder, Spark Double, Blasphemous Act, 2 mountains, and an island. New to the channel is David playing Liesa, keeping Smothering Tithe, Whip of Erebos, Mangara the Diplomat, Tome of Legends, Epic Downfall, Plains, and a Swamp. Kevin wins the die roll and starts us off. Kevin plays an island and casts Ponder. David just plays a swamp. I play a tap Selesnya Guildgate, passing to Jesse. Jesse plays a mountain. Kevin plays a mountain as well, and casts Talisman of Creativity. He then uses the mana from that to cast Glasses of Urza. David plays a Plains and casts Tome of Legends. I play a Plains as well, and cast a Prosperous Innkeeper, which makes me a treasure token as it comes into play. Jesse just plays a mountain. Kevin plays another island, and he casts Solemn Simulacrum. He searches his library for an island, putting it into play tapped, and passes. David casts a Serra Ascendant, and then activates his tome to draw a card, and with nothing else passes. I play a Plains, and cast my commander, Trelasarra the Moondancer. As she enters, she triggers the Innkeeper, gaining me 1 life, and this triggers Trelasarra, putting a +1/+1 counter onto her and letting me scry 1. Moving to combat, I swing the Innkeeper at Jesse, who takes the 1. Jesse plays a mountain and casts Zozu the Punisher. He then passes to Kevin, who at the end of turn, uses the glasses to peek at my hand. Kevin pays 4 in his main phase to cast a reduced Blasphemous Act. He wipes the board and gets to draw a card from the Sad Robot dying, and then pass his turn after dropping a land. David plays a Swamp, and pays 3 for Kambal, Console of Allocation. I just play a Plains for turn, and cast a Healer of the Pride. Jesse plays a mountain, and brings out Zurzoth, Chaos Rider. Jesse then passes, and at the end of turn, Kevin casts Thrill of Possibilities, discarding a card and drawing 2, which triggers Jesse's Zurzoth and makes him a Devil token. It also triggers Kambal, having Kevin get drained for 2, and David gains 2. Kevin then activates the glasses to look at David's hands this time, and moves to his turn. Kevin plays a land for turn, and then casts his commander, Zara, Renegade Recruiter. Once she's out, he casts a Phantasmal Image, and has it enter as a copy of Kambal. David casts Read the Bones in his main phase, scrying 2, drawing 2, and losing 2. And loses a further 2 from Kevin's Kambal, and Kevin gains 2. David then plays a Fetid Heath, and passes to me. I recast Trelasarra, who triggers the healer as she comes in, and gains me a life, and lets me put a +1/+1 counter onto my commander, and scry 1. I follow up with a Radiant Fountain, gaining 2 more life, adding another counter to Trelasarra, and scrying again. Jesse plays a mountain, and casts Tybalt, Rakish Instigator, which has him losing a total of 4 life, and David and Kevin each gain 2. He then downticks to make a Devil token, and swings a Devil each at Kevin and I, and Zurzoth goes at David. This triggers Zurzoth, and Jesse has everyone draw a card and discard a card, with Jesse making 3 more Devil tokens. We then move to damage as no one blocks, and everyone takes their respective damages, and then Kevin activates the glasses to look at my hand again. Kevin pays 4 to cast Spark Double, which he has enter as a copy of Zara. He then activates the glasses again, this time looking at Jesse's hand, and swings Zara at Jesse. This triggers Zara, who takes Bedlam Reveler from Jesse's hand and puts it onto the battlefield tapped and attacking Jesse as well. The Reveler has Kevin discard his hand and draw 3 cards. With no blocks, Jesse takes 7, 4 of which is commander damage. Kevin then casts a Phyrexian Metamorph, making himself a copy of the Reveler and discarding the remainder of his hand and drawing a fresh 3. At the end of turn, the original Reveler bounces back to Jesse's hand. David pays 4 mana to cast Mangara the Diplomat in his main phase, and just passes to me. My turn is very quick as I cast a Kazandu Mectorpot and pass to Jesse. Jesse untaps his army of devils, and then downticks Tybalt once more to make another devil token. He then casts a Goblin Snowman and moves to combat. A devil apiece goes at each of his opponents, triggering Zurzoth and forcing everyone to draw a card and discard a card, and this makes Jesse 3 more devils. The devils then each connect, and Jesse passes. Kevin uses his glasses to peek at David's hand. And with this information, he swings a Zara at Jesse and 1 at me. Kevin hits a Tuskguard Captain from my hand, and a Charmbreaker Devils from Jesse, who come into play swinging at their respective owners. The Spark Double Zara gets chumped by the Devil, who deals 1 to Kevin's face as it dies. David then takes the hit. Kevin then casts a Stunt Double, and makes a copy of the Charmbreaker Devils, and then passes turn, returning their respective creatures to their owner's hands. David plays a Plains, and casts his commander, Liesa, Shroud of Dusk, and forgets to put a counter onto his tome as he passes to me. I cast Harrow, sacrificing a land, and finding 2 lands. This has me losing 6, 2 to each of the Kambals, and 2 to Lies. And Kevin decides to Reverberate, getting a copy of it as well, and also loses 4. This would have David and Kevin gaining 2 life from my casting the spell, but people only lose life and don't gain life because of Tybalt preventing opponents from gaining life on Jesse's side of the board. We then each go and find 2 basics to put into play untapped, but I don't gain any life because of Tybalt. Jesse untaps and plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Devils. He casts a Banefire where X is 5 to take out Lies. This has Jesse getting drained for 6, and Kevin decides to respond by casting Twincast, getting drained for 4, and targets David's Comball. Moving to combat, Jesse swings 4 devils at David, and 1 devil at me, and 1 devil at Kevin. 3 more devils come into play as each player draws a card and discards a card at random, and I take the hit, and Kevin and David each block 1, and the on-death triggers each ping their respective player to the face, and David takes the rest that gets through. Kevin untaps, and on his upkeep, his copy of Charmbreaker Devils returns an instant or sorcery at random from his graveyard to his hand. He gets back Thrill of Possibilities, and promptly casts it. He follows up with a Consecrated Sphinx, which triggers David Mangara, allowing him to draw a card, which in turn makes Jesse another devil token. Moving to combat, Kevin swings the Spark Double version of Zara at David, and the original at Jesse. He hits the Charmbreakers again from Jesse, but no creatures from David. Jesse blocks Zara with the Goblin Snowman, and takes the hit from the Devils. David draws, which allows Kevin to draw 2 from the Sphinx, making Jesse another devil token. David then plays a land, and casts Despark in his main phase, losing 2 from the Kambal trigger, but exiling the Sphinx. He then passes to me. I cast Soul Snare, and pass to Jesse. Jesse plays a Valakut, which comes into play tapped, and then casts the Charmbreaker Devils from his hand. He moves to combat, swinging 1 devil at each player, and asks everyone draw a card and discard a card, making 3 more devils. We each block the devil token, and their on-death triggers has Jesse dealing 1 to Kevin, pinging Tybalt for 1, and pings David for 1. Kevin untaps, and the Charmbreaker triggers. He gets back Blasphemous Act this time, and plays a Tectonic Edge for turn. He casts Sower of Temptation, and gains control of Jesse's commander. Moving to combat, he swings the Stunt Double Charmbreakers, and the original Zara at David. and the Spark double Zara Jessie. David blocks a Charmbreaker copy with Mangara and takes 4 in the air, while Jessie just takes the full hit. David plays a Plains for turn and casts Soul Warden. He then recasts his commander, gaining a counter on his tome, and realizing he'd forgotten to put a counter onto it last time, we say it's okay and proceeds to do so. I play a land for turn, which triggers the Kazandu Nectar Pot, gaining me 1 life, and triggers my commander to put a +1/+1 counter onto her and scry 1. I then cast Tuskguard Captain, who upon entering, who gains me as much life as I lose to Liesa's trigger as it enters. I then add another counter to Trelasarra and scry 1. Jessie gets his trigger on his own Charmbreaker's Devil this time, and gets his only sorcery back, Banefire. He then plays a mountain, and thanks to Valakut, gets to Bold Soar of Temptation, and with a trigger on the stack, Kevin activates his Tectonic Edge to blow up the Valakut. The Sower then gets taken out, and Jessie gets back Zurzoth. He then casts a Wildfire Devils, which he gets to choose a random player for, and that player chooses an instant or a sorcery from the graveyard, which Jessie gets to cast for free. He ends up picking me, and I give him Harrow, which triggers Kevin's Common Ball, and has Jessie losing 2, and Kevin gaining 2. Jessie then goes to find 2 more mountains, after sacrificing a mountain. And once all that's done, he moves to combat. He swings a devil at me and David, and 9 devils and a Charmbreaker Devil at Kevin. We each draw a card and discard a card at random, making Jessie 3 more devil tokens, and we then move to blocks. David and I don't block, and Kevin blocks one of the tokens with Kambal, who, once it dies, gets targeted to deal 1 damage to it, and dies to the ability. And once damage is dealt, Jessie casts Banefire where X is 6 to deal it to Kevin's face, and then passes to Kevin, who at the end of turn, uses the glasses to look at Jessie's hand. Kevin resolves his copy of Charmbreaker Devils and gets back Ponder on his upkeep. He then casts it, and shuffles, and then draws. He plays a mountain for turn, and casts Quasi-Duplicate, making a copy of the Charmbreaker Devils, and then jumpstarts to cast it again, making a 3rd Charmbreaker Devil this time. He then moves to combat, and swings the Reveler, the Spark double version of Zara at David, and the 4/3 Zara, and the Stunt double Charmbreaker at me. Kevin gets to look at both of our hands, to which he's very disappointed since we have no creatures in hand. I activate my Soul Snare to exile the Charmbreaker Devil coming at me, and take 4 from Zara, while David just takes the full hit. With nothing else, Kevin passes to David. David's main phase has him playing a Swamp and casting a Dark Ritual, making 3 black mana and losing 2 life to his own commander. He then taps out completely for an Exsanguinate, where X is 7, draining the table for 7 and gaining 21. He also loses 2 from Liesa, but gets to kill Kevin and Jessie at the same time. He then hits me with his commander for 5 and passes to me. I play a land for turn, triggering the Nectar Pot and gaining me 1 life, which lets me add a counter to Trelasarra and scry 1. And then cast a Core Celebrant, gaining life and getting 2 counters and 2 scries, and David gains 1 thanks to his Soul Warden. I then move to combat and swing Trelasarra at David and deal 9 commander damage. I then pass turn. David plays a Swamp and casts Epic Downfall to take out the Tuskguard Captain. He loses 2 life from Liesa's trigger, and once that's done, casts Sidisi Undead Vizier, losing 2 more, but then gaining 1 as it enters, and using the Exploit trigger, sacrifices the Soul Warden. David then swings his commander at me, putting a counter onto his tome, and I take the hit, and David passes turn. My main phase has me paying 6 mana for a Rampaging Baloth, which triggers my life gainers, giving me 2 more instances of life gain, to put 2 more +1/+1 counters onto my commander, and I get to scry 1 twice. I do lose 2 from casting a spell, so I only net 1 life in total. I then play a land, which gains me a life, and makes me a beast token, which in turn triggers Trelasarra 3 more times, letting me add 3 +1/+1 counters to her, and scrying 3 more times. I then pass to David, who at the end of turn, activates his tome to draw a card. David plays a land, and then casts Athreos Shroud Veiled, and moves to combat. He swings at me for another 5 commander damage in the air, which I take. At the end of turn, David puts a coin counter onto Liesa thanks to Athreos, and passes. In my main phase, I cast Crib Swap to exile Sidisi, and swing the team all out at David. David chumps Trelasarra with a Translink token, and before damage is dealt, casts Generous Gift to turn the rampaging Balos into a 3/3 elephant. The elephant coming in has me gaining 2 life, putting 2 counters onto my commander, and scrying twice. David then takes the hit. With nothing else, I pass turn. David untaps and pays 8 mana for Vilis, Broker of Blood. He moves to combat, going at me again for 5 commander damage in the air, not to mention put another counter into his tome, and passes. I cast a Nykthos Paragon in my main phase, who enters and gains me 2 life, which puts 2 +1/+1 counters onto my commander, and then a +1/+1 counter onto each of my creatures. I then move to combat, and swing the team again at David. He puts Vilis in front of the healer, stopping it there, and puts Athreos in front of Trelasarra. He takes the rest, which is 8, and draws 8 cards thanks to Vilis. David untaps and in his main phase casts Wound Reflection, because even though I'm dead to commander damage, he wants to make sure. He moves to combat, swinging Liesa at me, who connects and wins in the game. Game review time. So I typically don't like to borrow people's decks, but I was really interested to see how Miguel's Trelasarra deck worked out. It was a life gain core, but unfortunately it seemed like all I was able to do was put counters onto my commander and scry away lands from the top of my library. Zurzoth continued to prove just how disruptive it can be, and despite the fact that you're drawing a card, that random discard is really backbreaking if you lose a good one. Not to mention he really punishes anyone who draws at the end of other people's turns, and it kept people honest like Kevin. Kevin's Zara deck is super fun to see in action, and it reminds me heavily of Trevor's Yidris deck, because it's basically as good as everyone else's deck, because he steals your creatures and uses them against you. I'd never seen a Liesa Shroud of Dust deck, and it was really interesting to see, and very painful with her second ability draining everyone every time they cast a spell. It was also nice to see David use Exsanguinate not to kill the entire table at once, although he did kill 2 to 3 opponents, so I guess that's kind of almost there. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.